Okay, lesson 10. The last of the Niyamas. Ishvara Pranidhana. We translate this as surrender, but it's a little bit more sophisticated than just surrender. And to understand that, we have to look at the meaning of Ishvara Pranidhana. In the word Pranidhana, you see the word prana, which is energy, vital energy. Pranidhana means letting energy flow. Ishvara means God, or the higher powers, or the universe. There are many ways to explain what that is, but the word God is a word that is tainted with dogma. And therefore I do not usually like to use that word, because there's so much misunderstanding about what that is, what that means. It definitely is not someone with a long white beard sitting on a cloud watching what you are doing. It's much more sophisticated, much more complicated, but actually much more wonderful than that. You have noticed in the previous classes up until now that I do talk about the universe or the higher powers. And you notice that I have quite some faith in those higher powers, having noticed that indeed they do take care of you, especially if you walk this path of spirituality. As I'm sitting here, I am one of the biggest atheists that you will meet. How is this possible? That is because I do not believe in the established explanation of what God is about. I do not believe in the established religions. Because that has, if you look at the origins of religions, all religions, they have the same roots as yoga has. I see some of you nodding, you have already found out. But what happened over time is that these ancient insights in the power and the unity of the universe of which we are part has been abused by authorities, has been turned into a system of government, taxing, also manipulating. And while the root of religion is enlightenment, awakening consciousness through control of energy, it has been turned into a tool of darkness. Because government does not want you to become enlightened. Because those who become enlightened see the failures of the government. The government rather keeps you in the dark. You can still see that with dictatorships around the world. Our neighbor is still persecuting, killing people who follow spiritual practices that lead to awakening of consciousness. Falun Gong, for example. The church as they allow it to exist, has to be in accordance with their doctrine. So it's still happening on a wide scale, actually. That's why I feel the use of the word God is it's tainted. It is not covering the load of what we're talking about here. So I rather use the universe or the higher powers. What is this all about? You probably already have a gist of it, a sense of it, because I've mentioned it on various occasions before. Ishvara Pranidhan, surrender to the Most High, is not by coincidence the last of the Yamas and the Niyamas. Everything is coming together here. Proper yoga study includes physical exercise, asana, done correctly, standing still. But it starts by laying a foundation with Yama and Niyama. So while you start practicing and sending energy up, leading instantly to a change in consciousness, I'm pretty confident that all of you to some extent have noticed that your perception is different, your sensitivity, consciousness is changing. The study of the Yamas and the Niyamas enhances that increased sensitivity and consciousness, because it confronts you with issues that normally play out in life subconsciously. And because it draws your attention to these issues, it becomes conscious, and with that, it enhances the process of you becoming more conscious and sensitive. There are many examples of yoga students, practitioners, who focus on the practice of yoga without the other 7 limbs of yoga. There are 8 limbs of yoga, the Eightfold Path. Asana is only one of them. But like with any complete system, if you only take out one element and you leave out the other 7, there will be a disbalance. And when you practice yoga without actually studying of the underlying philosophy, which has very great practical value, you become more sensitive and conscious without knowing how to handle it. The last niyama was self-study. That is not something that you do by sitting at your desk and say, today I'm going to study myself. It's a process that naturally takes off as a result of you controlling energy, fueling the crown chakra, leading to introspection, leading to self-contemplation. And when you do that without the proper guidance, you do that subconsciously. And you start digging into your past. You start going back to your childhood, your teenage years. And inevitably, you will come across painful memories. Memories that you've never thought of, that you've never been aware of, start rising to the surface of your consciousness. You carry those memories with you all the time. But they were subconscious. They determined how you acted, how you reacted, how you behaved. in daily life without you knowing it, without you understanding it, without you being aware of it. And with that, you have no control of it. Throughout the years of teaching yoga, it has happened occasionally, a couple of times, that someone would visit me feeling desperate. And I feel the energy splashing off of them. They're brimming with energy. They're practicing yoga every day, have been practicing for a long time, because it feels good. But their discipline, their eagerness to practice regularly is a blessing, but it's also a curse. Because the foundation is not there, they end up in emotional distress, despair. Ron, I've been practicing, I practice every day, most of the times even twice a day. On the one hand, I feel great. On the other hand, why do I have to cry all the time? Why do I feel so miserable all the time? Help me. Then my answer is what I'm trying to explain here. This is how it works. What you need to do is subject yourself to a system that is very systematically approaching the development of yoga, incorporating all 8 steps. So I cannot give you an instant solution, but join the course. Follow step by step how it unfolds, and you will see. You will see that you start to understand what is happening with you, why it is happening with you, and how it eventually can become a positive development. Even if you know all this, as a yoga student, you will go through a period, temporary, in which you are more sensitive, emotionally unstable than usual. But it is a temporary but also necessary stage that you go through. That is simply part of your transformation to higher consciousness. And if you understand what we are discussing in those classes, you have the tools there to deal with all this. Because what initially seems to be a burden will eventually be your biggest asset. So how does the higher power, the higher powers come into play? Surrender to God, letting energy flow. In your increasing perception, you will become aware of many things, good things and bad things. Our natural instinct is to label things good and bad. In yoga we say there is no good and bad. Everything is just as it is. It is us that puts label on it, good and bad. That is why I've told several times already that things that on the surface appear to be bad, we experience as bad, miserable, turn into something positive if we do the right thing with it, if we approach it in the right way. Based on the yamas and the niyamas that we have learned. Contentment, honesty, purity. When we label things bad, we start to resist. We don't like what we see, feel, or think, perceive. And the moment that we resist, our energy circulation is blocked. Obstacles occur. We have a tendency, for example, to oppress negative memories from the past, from childhood, traumatic experiences. The moment that we do that, we create an obstacle in the energy channels. In the long term, think in many years, decades, this blockage leads to disease, physical symptoms. All disease is caused by a blockage in the energy circulation. All disease. That is why, naturally, a yoga practitioner gradually becomes healthier. That is the healing aspect of yoga, which is truly there. But physical disease is the last stage of that energy blockage. The final stage is death. Before that occurs, there have been many, on an escalating scale, many symptoms that have warned you of the blockage. And the blockage, of course, as a yogi, ending up naturally coming to self-study, the process you need to follow is first to notice the signal, which is a form of pain or discomfort. From very subtle, on an escalating scale, to physical disease ending with death. In between, there are many levels of discomfort that normal people do not recognize. We do not acknowledge, we do not recognize it until it is on a rather gross level of manifestation, physical disease. So, we are scientists. We are scientists of life. And when we notice some resistance, some pain, some discomfort, suffering, from very subtle to very gross, instead of suffering, we need to go into that mode of the scientist, the yogi scientist. Why do I feel this? Why? What is causing it? There is a cause. You become a natural scientist of the law of cause and effect. You start seeing patterns that other people are incapable of seeing because of your increased sensitivity, your increased consciousness. You develop a deeper insight, and it always starts with the self. So when you detect any form of discomfort, you try to trace it back to its origin. And very often, it is something not in the current time, it's something from the past that has simmered below the surface for years and would have continued to simmer below the surface until the end of life if it were not that you had started practicing yoga. And it is this that also determines your destiny. It is no surprise that the pharmaceutical industry is the most profitable industry in the world. Because we all have blockages and we all get sick. Practicing yoga reduces that enormously. You let prana flow, and you do that by stopping resisting. There is no good and bad. Everything has a reason and a purpose. So when confronted with an emotion, a memory, a trauma that you instinctively label as bad, you need to take the next step. Go beyond that label of bad and just simply, rationally try to figure out what it is, what caused it, and how that cause came into being. There are other people involved, probably. So first there is anger or guilt. That is also an emotion that you need to go beyond. Surrender means to try to see everything in the grand scheme of things. The big picture of the universe, and you only being a part of it. And because of ego, you create an individual out of yourself with a certain goal that has nothing to do with the universe. And that is where the conflict starts. That is where the suffering starts. So every time when we experience pain, it is the universe trying to guide us. That sounds very cynical, especially if you have experienced traumatic experiences in life. But that is in the end what you can constructively do with those experiences. The deepest trauma brings out the best qualities in people if they can overcome their pain. The other side of the coin is if you cannot or are unable to overcome because you never learned how to do that or understand how it all works, it can destroy you. Literally. So in the end, there is only one way, right? When you know this, and you are struck by memory of trauma or despair in the current time, you know that there is a plan. And that trauma or that despair is part of that plan. And it is only designed to get you somewhere. Somewhere where you do not even understand yet where you need to be. So it starts to sound a little bit like a religion now. Huh? But you know, it takes a huge burden off your shoulder if you understand what this is about and how this works. Because a human being, without knowing, and even when you know exactly how it works, fear is your most powerful motivator that causes you to get stuck. And it is the deepest instinct of not only the human being, but all species. Because fear, technically, is just a tool of survival. Fear causes you to take action to avoid danger or to fight it if you cannot avoid it. But it is part of every thought we have, every decision we make, without us knowing it. And that is where we get stuck. That is where the blockages occur, and eventually we get sick. So stop resisting whatever it is that you discover. You cannot change it. So you might as well go with the flow and try to understand what it is designed to teach you. Ajita used a very interesting analogy. Don't know if it applies. I think it applies here. There are three kinds of people. They're sitting in a canoe on a stream, a river that is eventually flowing all the way down to the ocean. The first person frantically tries to row, trying to row upstream. Of course, this leads to exhaustion and not going anywhere, because you cannot row upstream. So you're not going anywhere and you end up exhausted. That is a condition that almost half of the population is in. Constantly fighting. And thinking that fighting is a good quality because it gets us somewhere. The second person is a person that throws away the paddle and just goes downstream with the canoe, bumping into the rocks, bumping into the river, the river banks. No control, no direction, just going. You think that's a lot better than trying to row upstream. Well, at least you don't get exhausted. The third one, that is the yogi. The yogi sits straight in the canoe with the paddle, using the paddle to steer the canoe. So you go with the flow towards the ocean, but you avoid the rocks and the river banks. And you steer the canoe in a direction, at least some direction, where you want to go. Avoiding obstacles, misery, being alert and in control. So that is where we want to go with all this. You cannot turn back the clock. You cannot change the past. So if the past makes you miserable, and that is the condition that almost everybody is in, who becomes conscious of the past, forget about the past. Focus on the future. Because that is where you can, from now on, start making a difference. And the experiences from the past will guide you on that path. Surrender to the Most High. Ishvara Pranidhan means accept things as they are. Do not resist what you cannot change. I never asked to be born in the Netherlands. Not that there is something bad with that, but just as an example. As a child, I compared myself with other fellow elementary school students. And I lamented my family. Why was I born here and not there? Every child does that. The grass on the other side of the fence always looks greener. It's natural. But it's foolish once you understand it. A human being, even us adults, well educated and what have you, we still have this tendency. And that is where, as a yogi, you have your paddle, your eyes wide open, you stay in control of what is happening. You stay in control of your thought processes and your natural instinct to act and react to certain situations in certain set ways, conditioned ways, that always lead you ending up feeling miserable. Yes,
I have
Linda?
a question. So with this example about going downstream into the ocean, and then with the example about the two roads, so the one who goes upstream is like the one who goes left, but then the one who, and then now we have two more. So the one who goes right and doesn't take camping gear or like something is the one who throws the paddle away. And then the one who takes something is the one who...
That is your own visualization, Neda.
I was trying to connect these two together.
Yes, but if you have the fork in the road, there are only two paths.
Yeah.
Those two, the one that tries to row upstream and the one that just goes down without any control, they are both on the left path.
Oh, okay.
The one that takes control is on the right path.
So going on the right path is not blindly going on the right path, but being fully aware and...
Not fully aware. That is a very dynamic process that it goes hand in hand. It starts somewhere. Try to see the picture as follows. You're an ignorant being, but there is a sparkle of light. Something caused a sparkle of light in you that leads you to start following your heart. Often that is an experience of misery or desperation. The lucky person that has that sparkle of light at the horizon starts focusing on that light and less on the misery in which they have been drowning. Yeah? That is where you start feeling guided. That is where you start following your heart. But then you notice that there are all kinds of obstacles that make it seem impossible. So you focus on that light, and that light gives you the faith. Rationally, you have no confidence. Deep in your heart, that light gives you the confidence that you have an intuitive confidence that it is the right way to go. I think all of you are in that category. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here.
So this light is letting us to keep going forward. We still don't know what's like there, but we have this light, and as we keep going, then bit by bit, things start to unfold.
You start following your heart, but along the way, with the years passing by, you notice many times you become distracted.
Like this following your heart, is it a very laser pointed something?
No, that's what I'm saying. It's a very dynamic process. Without you being aware of it, you become distracted along the way. Because you're never sure what your heart is really telling you. So people sometimes ask me, how do you distinguish between the voice of the head and the voice of the heart? It's very difficult. You have an idea, you have a feeling, a hunch, but you're not sure. Am I deceiving myself? Am I just lying to myself, telling that this is my heart speaking? It can be a construction of the mind. In the beginning, you just don't know for sure. You know, the answer to that is very unscientific. Or maybe it is scientific. It's yoga scientific. Simply explore it, and if it proves to be the wrong choice, then leave it behind and see it as a positive experience that helps you a step further. That road on the right side, full of obstacles and challenges, has many sideways. In religious scriptures, it's called hell or the devil that's tempting you. But sometimes it takes time before you realize that you got sidetracked. And there's nothing wrong with becoming sidetracked, because we are only human, and it happens, again, only to teach us. You cannot reach a higher level without growing capacity to be able to deal with higher level. Everybody, when 18 years old, wants to sit in the room. Everybody wants to sit in the director's seat. Everybody wants to be the director at 18 years old. It's not how it works. Life works like a career. To get to the seat of the director, there are so many things you have to learn. Not only about the company itself, but about the world, about economy, about human behavior, the people that you work with and of which you are a part. And as a yogi following the heart, you will evolve. And along the way, you will realize that the universe guides you towards a higher level through experience. And experience, we have a tendency as human beings to label as misery, as suffering, as bad. We label it as bad. When you understand how it works, you stop labeling things good and bad. You start seeing that everything has a function. And then it will propel you forward. It will propel you to higher levels. If I look at the friends that I left behind 23 years ago when I came to Korea, or my siblings, they're all on the left path. It's very comfortable, it's very steady, but they will never go to a higher level. They will never have any challenge other than just daily things, affairs. They're in fact all still in the same pattern that they were 23 years ago. If I compare that with the path that I followed, It's constantly evolving, constantly changing. I started to appreciate that. It is the huge paradox of yoga. Yoga is about sattva, it's about balance, about harmony, about peace. But the quality of stability, peace, sattva, allows you to engage in such a path, such a dynamic path of constant dynamic change. You see the paradox? You can stand instability because of your stability. An instability that other people avoid because they have no tools to deal with it. So they stay on the left path. It's predictable, it's comfortable, it's steady. For you and me, it's boring. It kills the spirit. Once you have experienced that, you cannot go to that left path anymore. I know each time when I got distracted from the right path, I lost more and more hair. Seriously, sheer frustration, stuck. It already started in my mid-20s.
So sattva then leads us to the purpose for sattva is to let us ride this wave of dynamic change and not be stable in this change.
Yeah. I mean, don't envy me. Please don't. Also, I tell you, don't take a dog because I have a dog. If you take a dog, if you want to have a dog, first of all, I don't want, because then you really put your heart into it. And second, know that it's a commitment for 15 years. And if you have a full-time job, just don't. Wait until the time comes that you don't have to be away from home so much. That's one thing. But you know, most people who choose to be a yoga teacher, they start a yoga studio, and that's what they will do for the next 30 years, just like every other human being. They get stuck. I'm here with nothing. Other than Ishvara, the universe taking care of me. Follow your own path. My karma from the past is so unstable that is the path that I had to follow. Some of you will, and most of you will not have such restless, tumultuous karma from the past. But it's just amazing how, as a human being, you want things to change tomorrow. And you feel in your heart, and you know deep in your heart where you can go, what you can achieve. But you want it tomorrow. But in the scheme of the universe, it takes 30, 40 years. And I can say that because it took me 30, 40 years to confidently say it works. But I'm definitely not saying that you must live like that. Just follow your heart and it will just give you whatever it is that you need. If it is stability, then that's what you get. Depends on your past, your karma. If it has to be tumultuous, that's because you have a lot of karma to burn, a lot to learn. Or look, I mentioned it before, the alternative for me, if I had not started practicing yoga, the same fate as my brothers would have befallen me. The path of self-destruction, which I was on. And took many years to tear myself away from. With that light in the distance, hope in your heart, And although still you don't have control and you're still frustrated by not being able to... It took me 9 years to come here, Korea. I was part of a group of Hapkido practitioners in Amsterdam who, just like me, were very dedicated. And within a year of our Korean teacher leaving, they came to Seoul to practice with him. You know how unhappy that made me? That I couldn't go with them. But I had a plan that they didn't have. I had a vision that they didn't have. And it took me until recently to understand that. That's why it took me 9 years. After 23 years, I'm still here on a very dynamic path of evolution. They came back after 6 months when their money ran out. They didn't have a plan. They just came and they just had to go back to their old life. One works at the insurance company, the other works at the golf course, the other works at was a policeman. They all gave up on their dream because they didn't plan, they had no vision. At that time I didn't understand it, that the difference between them and me was I had a vision, so it had to be well prepared. So it didn't have to end in 6 months or 1 year. So I prepared very thoroughly. And that is the message that I'm always giving you too. You want to change, prepare very thoroughly. Don't throw away your old pair of shoes before you have a pair of new ones. They left, threw away their pair of shoes, but then they had to come back and put on those old shoes again. And they visited 2 years ago. I put a photo on Facebook. If you are friends with me, you saw it recently. The title of the post was the Master and His Disciples, our Hapkido teacher and I think 7 of my friends, Hapkido friends. Most of them,
At that time, you did the trekking with them? Trekking?
we went to Soraksan.
I remember the photo.
But most of them have serious health issues. Their energy got stuck. They're still resisting. Most of them have health issues, except one. All of them have health issues. Serious health issues. They all got stuck. Without knowing it, just blaming it on aging, which is what we do. Of course, age comes with its limitations and ailments, but many of those can be avoided or at least postponed until very high age, until you're in your 80s, 90s. You're impatient, Neda. I can sense your impatience. Just practice. Practice and keep yourself busy with your daily things, even when you don't like them. But with that light in the distance, that's where you want to go. And realize that it won't happen tomorrow. Realize that it takes years, if not decades. That's why 2007 I closed my school. I was burnt out. And you think a yogi knows better, but it happened again in 2015, 16. In 2016, when I had to teach 7 days a week as part of the deal, which I didn't have much choice. Or of course I have, but I had to burn out to make that choice. I burned out physically then, 2016, 2018, when I canceled all the teaching. That's when I was mentally done. I also said, what a horrible teacher I am. I am not even a yoga teacher. I will never teach anymore. I just needed a break. Just needed to take distance. But I prepared. All those years I prepared also for the eventuality that I wouldn't teach yoga anymore. And those seeds are finally coming to growth. Maybe I'll tell you about it later. But just amazing how, again, the universe steps in at the most desperate moment. You become so confident it may almost look like arrogance. No? But I don't wish such an unstable life on anybody. When you're my age, you need to have a stable home and a stable life and a stable future. But I guess that is the life of a yogi. Not the fake yogis. They do exactly the same as everybody else does. And they get stuck too. I got stuck too. I unstuck myself because I know how it works. Ishvara Pranidhan. Because when you get stuck, it means that you're doing something not right. When I had the Studio Nita, when I was doing many things not right. But I had the arrogance of a yogi. I was running that studio all alone. I didn't even know how to run it with people, hiring people, or I didn't know anything about the marketing, promotion, sales, other than just putting an advertisement before Facebook and before the internet really took off. You put an advertisement in a local newspaper, a local Soul Classified or something like that, and it worked. But that was my limitation. That's how far I could go. And through all those experiences, I realized I should focus on yoga and not on marketing and sales and what have you. So when Ray called me and suggested me to take care of the program there in that big gym, that was the perfect marriage. A super traditional yogi in the most commercial gym in Korea. If you are a radical as a yogi, you would say, what are you doing, idiot? How can you go into business with those people? They are so commercial. No, for me it provided a very stable foundation, 8 years of enormous growth and development. It just allowed me to become a better yoga teacher and a better human being, and to develop all these materials to a better level, higher level. You know what other people do? They look back and they have many grudges. If I think in a negative way or not like a yogi, I have an avalanche of complaints about the way that they treated me. All the lies and false, empty promises and deceit. How they constantly tried to get rid of me after they made it successful and profitable. They never succeeded in getting rid of me until 2015, when everybody already had left years before. I just used it to my advantage. And in the meantime, I prepared for the future, which failed totally, and then suddenly starts taking off in the way that I envisioned long time ago. I'll tell you a secret. 3 weeks ago, I cried. For the first time in my life, I cried out of sheer relief. Relief. Happiness. Not pain, not misery, not frustration. Relief. The dogs were lying on the floor and they raised their head and they were looking at me like, what are you doing? Yeah. We'll see. Surrender. That's how your hair gets gray, white. The hair that you can't lose just turns white. I see I'm the only one here with white hair. Okay. Questions? Okay, let's have a short break. Start with Asana.